And welcome back. Now, as you can see from the workbench here, there's lots of LEDs and stuff going on and scrolling. And oh, hello. Yes, hello indeed. Now, whilst there's been some good news and some bad news this week regarding the stuff on this bench, let's get the bad news out of the way first. And thankfully, it's got nothing to do with the stuff over here, but everything to do with this here. Now, some of you may recognize these as being sort of key fobs, and this thing here being a little coil for an RFID reader. So let's just have a look about what actually went wrong, if that's the right thing to say, but why I'm a little bit disappointed with what happened here before we come on to more exciting news with stuff going on over there. So here we are with it set up on a breadboard then. It's only got a few pins and we only want 3 anyway, so it's power at this end and data out here. This data out is in fact via the software serial port, so we're going to pin 2. We've chosen that one. Well, I think that was the example sketch actually. So pin 2 it is. Hello Benny. So he's come in to check that I'm doing it right. Yeah, I'm going to mention that in just a second. If you notice there at the back, I've got a new Arduino clone board. Why? Well, if you remember a few videos ago, I used my Soul full-size board for the wireless loft project because I said, well, it's too big anyway, so I don't really want one. So I'll use that with the shield because the W51 shield fitted nicely on top. And then, of course, I realised that, well, hang on, I haven't actually got a full-size board now to put any other shield on. So I ordered this one. It was only about 3 or 4 quid. It wasn't much. And because it's nice and bright red, I thought, great, I'll keep this one for my demos when and if I ever want a full-size board, and put the other one back up in the loft. So that's why I've got that. Now, it's connected up to this RFID board then. That's all very nice. Well, you say nice, you'll see what will happen in a minute. Let's go over to the code window where I've got a program running. Right, that is the entire program. It's this bit here. All we're doing, we're firing up the software serial on ports 2 and 3. We're not interested about port 3 because that's the transmit. We're not actually transmitting anything from the Arduino to it. We're just receiving stuff from it to the Arduino. We're having a debug window, 9600, and just displaying whatever we get out. Okay, well, let's try and display something then. Now, this has a range, it says in the data sheet, of about 5 centimeters, which is what? 5 centimeters would be about that, so maybe 2 inches ish. So let's have a look. Here we are. Oh, a bit closer, a bit closer. Let's drop it inside it. There, now it reads it. So you have to be basically on top of it before it will read it. You can see it flashing on and off there. Now they all work, all different numbers, except that one doesn't want to work. Look, oh, there it goes. But you do really have to. I just don't understand why you have to be on top of it like this, because if this was mounted in any kind of panel device, if you were scanning it or on a wall perhaps behind a plastic plate, I just don't know how you'd get close enough to this device to read it. Now it reads it there. That's probably about the best I've ever had of it, to be quite honest. It's about 0.5 centimeter, maybe 1 centimeter pushing it. So there we are. That was that. And as you notice there, it takes a long time to read. But once it starts reading, it reads very, very, very quickly, the same number time and time again. So I don't know. I'm just curious about this board. It's supposed to be okay. It's a 6300. What's the prefix on it? Let me just have a look. It's a RDM 6300. So well, and the only reason I made this, because if you remember, we had some RFID video a while back. It's the one on screen now, and it worked very well. That was the MyFair RFID cards working at 13.56 megahertz. They work very well. No problem with those at all. This works at 125 kilohertz. And the only reason I built this, because I thought, that might be able to read a pet ID. A chip implanted into your pet, a dog, a cat, whatever. Well, probably those two actually. To read the value, but well, it barely reads these when they're right up to it. I tried it on Benny and he wouldn't really sit still long enough for me to really pin him down, but even when I did, it just registered nothing, and I wasn't surprised really. If these had registered from the good 5 centimeters like they're supposed to, which is probably about there, Yeah, oh, nothing, as you can see. It's just not powerful enough. Then I think there might have been a chance it would have registered a PET one, but even then I didn't know. I just took a punt on it really to see whether it would work. Where did I get it from? Okay, let's have a look. It's this thing here, £1.72, which is probably about what, $2, and for less than the price of a cup of coffee I thought, well, it's worth a shot. We'll just see if it works or not. Now, I haven't entirely given up on this, I've got to be honest. I'm just a little bit irritated it didn't work anywhere near as good as the MyFair card reader, but I'll put this into mothball for a little bit before I try something else. That's the end of that then. I'm just going to put that to the back of my box and maybe dig it out in 6 months' time and think, right, let's have another go at this and see why the range is so poor. So that didn't work too well, but we have much better news about the LED matrices. Is that the right word? Yeah, 8x8 matrix, LED matrices that needs a good update, and here it comes. Right, first a little bit of news on the original video that I did, must be a year ago now, and it used these individual units and you have to wire them up like this. I'll take all this off in a minute just to show you and remind you, but there was a question on the forum, does it work with a fifth? Or rather, no, the question was, I've added a fifth, why doesn't it work with a fifth? And basically it was the old MAX 7219 library. It just didn't work with more than 4, and I'm guessing that's because the developer didn't test it with more than 4. He probably had 4 together like this, like I originally had, and when I added a fifth, or when the viewer added a fifth, it just all went haywire. You just got rubbish on this end one here. So I thought, okay, it definitely doesn't work. I've tested it out. What are we going to do? And you know, every single library that I came across was all pointing to that same underlying library. Everybody had grabbed a copy, not necessarily called it their own. They probably left the copyright or at least the author message inside, but it was the same library. But now I found a new one, and whilst it's not perfect, which if you notice as it goes through, some of these digits go a bit funny as they're scrolling across. See a little bit like, and then they settle down again. I mean, it's not the end of the world, and it's the best certainly that I've found out there without writing my own. I'm not going to do that because there's a very good reason why not. But just back to this then, if you do add a fifth or a sixth or a seventh, the hobby components library that I'll add at the foot of this video in the video description does work with more than 4. The caveat being it does have these funny little bits going on in the middle, but generally it works. And also, I've mentioned it time and time again, what you're seeing here on camera is very bright white lights with sort of a red glow around the edges. In real life, these are very bright red lights with, you know, no glow as such at all really. They're just very bright red lights, and you might have noticed that it's upsetting the video camera here, getting bright and dark. So that's how bright these things are. So that's sort of the good news for the old way of doing things. So let me just take all this apart and we'll look at the hardware and what this is and why it's not optimal. And there's a better way of doing it now, much better. Now I know some of you are worried that sometimes I don't get all my hardware and software checked by Benny, but here you can see he's checking for overflowing bits and general hardware consistency. And I think he's pretty happy with it. He's given a good inspection there, looking at every single fact. Is that okay, Benny? Can we say that's a pass? You don't want to do any kind of final test? Excellent. Okay, well, we'll move on anyway. Thanks very much. Right, so I've uncoupled the fifth one. You'll see why a little bit later. In fact, as you can see now, the first one stopped working. The trouble with these, because they're individual units, so the chip at the top here, so at this end, you couldn't turn them around if you wanted to connect this end to here, even if you wanted to, because then there'd be a massive gap between each one of these. And of course it's very easy to have these dislodged, which is probably what's happened, why this one's gone blank. If I reset it, it might spring back into line. Oh, there we are, so it's okay. But once you've taken one of these wires off, it gets terribly confused. So that's the disadvantage of these. You need all these wires going, you know, top to tail, top to tail, top to tail, and it's really rubbish. Oh yeah, the first one incidentally is always this end, so it comes from the Arduino into here and goes down there, even though our writing is going from right to left or at least scrolling going right to left, the actual units, the MAX7219 code considers this to be the very first unit, this the second one, third, fourth, and so on. Now, as a sort of a mini display with 4 on there, yeah, it works well enough, and I was quite pleased with it when it actually worked first time with the original library. And the original library works well with just 4, it just doesn't handle that 5th or 6th element. So what you're going to do if you need more as such, well, of course you can use the hobby components one. We did have a little bit of jitter on a couple of those characters. That might have been though, because the 5th one that I was using was in fact one of these. Now you can see this is a very long strip, and they're all nicely joined together. And can you see any wires on it? No, I can't either, Benny. Yeah, that's quite right. This unit here is in fact 2 units. They've been soldered together, and what I did, I cheated. The end one here, I simply turned at 90 degrees, just like these others, connected that one to here, and just showed it to you like that. Now the jitter might have occurred then because all these other ones were sort of running in parallel. If you don't define the LED matrices that you're using, it just copies what's been sent to another one. So whatever, that was a little bit of a cack-handed way of doing it, but at least you could see that there were 5 joined up and they did work. But of course we don't need to now. In my original video I said, wouldn't it be great if we can get these units with they're 4 together, they come in strips of 4, they're about £3, just over £3, between 3 and £3.50, so that's probably about between $3.60 and $4 maybe, something like that, for a strip of 4. And I've got 2 strips here and I've soldered them together. You can probably just make out the soldering there. Look, you see, I didn't do it underneath, I actually put in a very little tiny, well, a header pin bent down actually. So I've got a strip of 8 there. I've actually got some more on order as well, because I'm going to make a nice big long strip now, because there's a library. Now one of the viewers on here, and I'll actually name him in a minute, it could be a her, who knows, said, have I got the library running for one of these 4-in-1s, because then you don't need any of that wiring or anything else, just comes a long strip, and joining them together, as I say, is almost seamless, isn't it, really? Almost. Come on to that. I said no, I haven't had time to even look at it, and they responded saying, hey, I found this library, could it work? Well, I saw that the library was in fact written by Nick Gammon from Australia, and if any of you know Nick Gammon, not personally obviously, but by reputation, he's a very big presence on the Arduino forum, and he is, I would say, the guru of all things Arduino. He's forgotten more than what I've ever learned, I suspect. He had originally written a library to sort of move them one matrix or one digit at a time, and then he upgraded it, I think it was a couple of years ago now, 2015 anyway, to have a smooth scrolling. I thought I really got to try that, so I tried it with my original 4-in-1 that I had and hadn't used, saw that it worked, immediately got another one, ordered another 5 as well, and it just runs beautifully. So I think it's about time we got this one connected up and put this one to one side. Just before I go, if I turn this around slightly at an angle like this, you'll see, oh look, the level of these LEDs here compared to this one here is not the same. Let me just push that out of the way because that's upsetting the lighting. Look, you see there's a couple of millimeters there difference, because this was one strip that I had lying about for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or whatever it was. And then this one is a new one, so it's obviously a different factory. I think it's even got different markings on it. Same number, but obviously not from the same batch, and probably not the same factory either. So if you are going to get them, just buy as many as you need in one go and just then connect them, because at least they'll all be sitting at the same height. The reason they're not sitting at the same height here is because these sockets are subtly different from these sockets here. Okay, right, let's get it connected up and show you what we can do with it. Right, so this is the 4-in-1 display. There's 2 of them connected together on a single Arduino Nano here. And, well, the code itself is pretty straightforward, to be quite honest, because Nick Gammon's done all the hard work. He's created the library, so all we've got to say is display this message, pretty much. So let's have a look at the code then, without further ado. So this is the code for the bit banging, he calls it bit banging SPI MAX7219 or something like that. So this is the bit I've sort of stuck together, or at least I might have amended the original example. That's what I've done, is the original example. So it's not long, look, I mean, you know, there's just a few lines of code. one caveat. If you use the Arduino IDE, this runs out the box. If you use the Eclipse IDE, this does not run out the box. I had to make a few amendments to the library to make it compatible. I'll put it into the video description underneath, and it will probably be a link to a GitHub repository or something like that. I should really fork his library to make a version of it compatible for Eclipse. But given that he's the guru, I feel a little bit intimidated about doing that, to be quite honest. So we'll just see how it goes. Right. So what you can see down here then is the message that we've put in up here in this little block here, and the message, and it says, well, basically, turn a couple of pins on and off. We'll come to those in a minute, and update the display. And here he is. I mean, it's simplicity itself. In the loop, all it's doing is moving the display along and then starting all over again. Now, I have got a piece of this acetate over here, as you can see, if we go back to the main screen, because if I take it off, look how washed out that becomes. Now, this acetate sheet is in fact what they use for lighting in theatres and stuff like that. It's really cheap, you know, 2 or 3 quid. I think I've mentioned it many times before actually for LED stuff, and it does highlight the contrast. And once again, I'll say it again, you're seeing here sort of white LEDs with a sort of red fringe. In real life, what you're seeing here is a lovely red LED, but without the acetate, although it's still nice and lovely and red, it's not as nice as with the acetate on. That's why alarm clocks and things always have a red front on them, assuming that your LED is red, of course, not blue or something. Okay, so the actual sketch that he supplied is absolutely wonderful, and I thought, well, what else could we do to that sketch just to make it a little bit more useful? Given that I've now got another 5 of these on order, I've obviously got some idea of what I'm going to do. And one of the things I want to do, of course, is display a moving message in my office here where I'm recording this about possibly the temperature up in the attic. Remember, I've got that wireless Arduino up there sending stuff out. I might want to look at, say, I don't know, my YouTube subscription count. That's always useful and it's quite interesting to me. So there's lots of things you could put on here. The subscriber that actually pointed me to this is going to make a sort of a weather station out of it, which is another good thing. I could certainly do that as well. So this was the subscriber who alerted me to the fact that this library is available. Here it is, look, this is where he or she has mentioned it, and my response is to say what a fantastic thing to find, and some reports about the bottom here about the fact it wouldn't work in Eclipse particularly well unless I changed a few things. But there we are. So thank you, Fabrice26306, for giving me a heads up on that. That's brilliant. Good bit of collaborative working there. Super. But there's a few things we could do to this code just to make it a little bit more useful. So, for example, it'd be nice if we could slow down or speed this up a little bit, isn't it? Now, of course, within the code itself, there's any number of things you can do in here. You could have a message that stops after a while, just sits there and then flashes maybe to draw attention to the fact that there is a message, or your code could detect if there's been a change in temperature, say, and start flashing and scrolling, and only display it when that, I mean, the logic of it is entirely up to you. But in the meantime, there's something we can do at hardware level down here to make things just that little bit more, I don't know, feature rich, I suppose you'd call it. For example, on my Arduino here, if I bring these into shot, you'll see there's a couple of pots. These are variable resistors, 10K, connected to, they're both connected to the analog pins. Okay, so what does this one do? If I turn this, oh look, it slows it right down. Or, if you can read really quickly, we can speed it up. Now actually, on a little tiny display like this becomes unreadable. But if this display were much longer, if you can imagine a ticker tape like in, you know, the stock exchange, you would actually be able to read that by following it around. But anyway, at least here we can control that display. What else could we do? Well, let's have a look what this one does. Oh look, this one controls the brightness from super bright to super dim. Well, I say super dim, it's still very readable. And indoors, of course, you will be able to read that very easily. Now, a word about brightness, and in fact, Nick Gammon does mention this in, I think it's in big bold capitals or something. Each one of these LEDs, when they're on, consumes about 20 milliamps or thereabouts. It's all, I think it's all time shifted and multiplexed. But although only some LEDs are on at some times, if you were to have all of them on, for example, it would consume a whopping rate, I don't know, 4 amps, I think he says. So you have to be a little bit careful. And what I'm going to do is actually supply the power to this thing. So the wires that come in this end, I'm going to supply a separate 5 volt 2 amp supply, so from like a phone charge or something like that, because I don't really want to put any more power through this poor little Nano. It's only supposed to give us something like 500 mil, isn't it? So that is really going to be pushing it if I start connecting 5 of these up. So I'm not going to. Basically, there's a short of it. It'll be a wall wart plugged into the wall, 2 amps to supply to this, and the Arduino, well, may get supplied from that as well. I could put it into V in or something like that, because the Arduino is going to take very, very little, isn't it? Now, the other thing is, on that same topic of power and consumption, when this is scrolling backwards and forwards, if you're not actually present, then why is it actually scrolling anything at all? I mean, it's just wasting power, isn't it? If there's nobody there to see it, it's all a bit wasteful. No, it stopped now. How did that happen? Now, if I was to come into the room, I would want that message to sort of magically reappear. A bit like that, look, you see? Yes, of course. I have a very small PIR connected to it. Now, these are tiny, not those big clunky things, but the big clunky things will work just as well. But I found these very small ones, well, months and months, probably a year ago now. They have absolutely no adjustment on them at all. They just go high for about, I think it's 2 seconds. So it's only plus, minus, and then the signal. And the signal wire, the yellow one here, it goes high for about 2 seconds. But of course, within my Arduino, I say, actually, I want it to go high for 10 seconds. So if as long as there's movement, it will continue to stay high, that pin here. But when movement all stops, and we can detect this by that little LED at the back there, when that LED goes off, it means that the PIR unit has said, no more movement, like now. But now I count another 10 seconds or something, and then that will go off. So the Arduino controls when the display actually changes, not the PIR. There we are. And if I wave my hand, there we are, it's back on again. So I think that will be definitely implemented, because I don't really want this scrolling. You can imagine 5 of these 4 in one unit, so I don't want that scrolling all day, every day, when there's absolutely nobody here to read it. But when I'm moving about, it would be very useful. So how did I connect all this up? Well, let's have a look at the code. It's simplicity itself, and it's just building on really what we've learnt before. Let's have a look down the bottom. So what I'm saying is here, look, get delay. There's a little routine here that reads the analog value 0 to 1023, and then maps it to a value of 5 and 75, because I've determined that 5 is the real minimum you want. If we turn that, I think it is on minimum, isn't it? There's the minimum, which is just enough to make it look fluid as it's moving across. Any slower than that, it all becomes a bit jerky. And 75, well, as you saw, that's actually a bit too quick for this. You can't quite read it anymore. So you can adjust that to suit. And the brightness, ditto, it's just another analog value. We're mapping that from 0 to 15, because that's what the LED can take. That's the MAX 7219. Expects a value between 0 and 15. Now, the library that Nick supplied didn't expose the brightness. I've actually added that as a function within his class to set the brightness, and the delay also was fixed by him. So I've changed that as well. So really, what I'm saying is, if you want those features and you're not too happy about changing libraries yourself, then by all means take the copy that I've amended, if you like. Okay, what else was there? Let's have, yes, now if you're going to order these, now these are pretty cheap. As I said, they're about £3 a piece, which is what, $3.60 these days? Yeah, I know, the pound's taking a pummeling, isn't it? So that's cheap. So if we look here, £3.13 in fact this. Now it says here free shipping. Look, great. You think, right, I'll have 2 of those. The problem is, when you buy more than a certain value from AliExpress, they'll add shipping back on. They won't give you free shipping. It's just one of the rules that AliExpress has. I think it's the way they ship it, whether it's tracked or not, you know, a higher value item. So if you want them at £3.13 a piece, you'll have to put in as many orders, individual orders, as you need them, and then you'll get them at that price. So if I add one to the cart now, for example, let's have a look at my cart. You'll see what I mean. So I've got one here. So we can say, here's, look, free shipping. Right, okay, that's lovely. You think, no, I'm gonna have 2 actually, so let's increase that to 2. Okay. Oh dear, they've added my shipping charges back on now. So, I mean, you might not consider this to be particularly onerous, but it does go up every time you add one. So if you wanted 5, like I did, the shipping goes up to £2.44. Now, in the bigger scheme of things, you might think, well, that's not important, but if you count every penny, like I was, you'll just put in individual orders and get them with free shipping. Great. Of course, there is 5 times the chance then that one of them is going to go missing in the post, but I've never had anything go missing in the post. Not really, not from China. It's all pretty good these days. Right, so that was just one little caveat. What else was there I was going to tell you? Right, okay, the libraries then. So this is the Nick Gammon library for the actual 7219. And as you can see here, he's added smooth scrolling demo. That's the sketch that we're using there that I've amended. And I've also amended his .h.cpp just to add in those couple of extra functions and tweak it so it works with the Eclipse IDE. That's my development environment. So that's the 7219. You'll also need this one, Bitbang SPI. Well, that's it. It's pretty simple stuff, to be quite honest. So the code is simple. I'll put this up there. It's just tweaked example what he's had. The message, of course, yes. Now the message, if we look at that, obviously it's not going to be a fixed message like this. This might be something that you've constructed with different values, say from a weather station. So, you know, the temperature, the wind speed, whatever, the stock price, who knows. So all these values here that I've included as hard coded will be injected, if you like, by your code. But that's pretty simple to do, isn't it? All you're doing is constructing one message and then displaying it. And as I say, you can do what you like with the message. You can make it stop, flash, whatever. It's marvelous once you've got something working like this. So this is currently working with 2 of those 4-in-1s. So when I get the other 5 on here, that'll be, I think it's over a meter I get then of display, a very good meter. In fact, let's measure these and have an absolute look. So this is, so for an individual one, let's have a look where the join is. That's there. So that's 13 centimeters for one. So if I don't want to use all 7 though, because otherwise I won't have anything here for future demos. I might use 5 new ones because they'll all be the same size and the same height, and I've joined these together now. So I might keep these 2 for future demos and experiments and things. And so if I have 5, what did we say it was? 13, wasn't it? 13, that's centimeters, of course. So that's 65 centimeters. That's 0.65 of a meter, which is, well, I can't work that in inches. Let's have a look. 0.65 is 25.5 inches. So it's just over 2 foot. If I was to put these other 2 on, then it'd be up to something like 89 centimeters, which is 35 or 30, more or less 3 foot. So that's not bad, is it really? And these displays, quite frankly, are reasonably priced, I believe. £3 or just over £3 for a 4-in-1. Not bad. And just so much easier to wire up. I mean, look, all I've got here is 1 set of cables going in. Everything else just follows through automatically. And 5 cables, I mean, it's 2 for power, so that's plus minus, and the other 3 are the SPI wires. So there's not a lot going on, really. It's quite magical, really, in how it works. Okay, that's it. Great stuff. I'm really looking forward to those 5 turning up, probably about a month from now. But when I get the whole thing set up and constructed and put in my office somewhere, I'll just do a quick snapshot and add it to a future video just to prove that it's all working okay. Great stuff. Right, we'll leave it there. Remember, all this stuff that we've discussed on this video, where I've got the stuff and the libraries and all that, will all be in the video information, probably on GitHub. So you can just download it and it'll just work out the box. And if you want these, well, you know where to get them now, but as I say, you do have to order them individually if you want that price. And if you're not too bothered about the postage, well, just order as many as you want in one go. But do order them from the same place all in one go, as you'll end up with the problem I have here. I mean, I say problem, but it's not quite right, is it? Where the height of these LEDs isn't absolutely the same, because it looks like there's a little tiny step here now. Not a lot, but it's enough to irritate us, I think. Right, let's put that on there. There we are. So the temperature in New York is some value that probably isn't 88, so it's totally made up. So we'll leave it there. Okay, thank you very much indeed for watching. Don't be shy in putting comments down below if you've got any questions on how to do things. So that's it. thank you very much for watching. Do give me a thumbs up, share, and don't be backwards and coming forwards in those comments. Great stuff. See you in the next video. I hope you're finding these videos useful and interesting. There are plenty more videos to choose, and a couple are shown below. And if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, just click on my picture below and enjoy the rest of the videos. Thanks for watching.